Hello, everybody, and welcome to IndieQuest, the celebration of the indie and obscure. I'm your host, Josh, and I'm here with my buddies, my friends, Steve and Seth. How you guys doing today?
I'm good. You brought the energy level up like 3 or 4 times higher than our pre-show chat, and you had like a little bit of a almost like a little crypt keeper energy in there or something. I'm not entirely sure the vibe you're bringing, but I'm here for it. And otherwise I'm doing quite good. I had a big old Chipotle burrito right before we ate, so now I'm just waiting on the heartburn to hit, and yeah, otherwise sipping coffee and loving life. How about you, Seth, buddy? How you doing?
I am doing well. So something that I was thinking about, and I meant to comment on it. Josh being extremely exuberant tonight reminded me of it. And I wanted to say something to Steve. So Steve and our buddy Travis both streamed this weekend for a special event for Cartridge Club. It's over now, but I'm sure there's like a VOD or something out there that you guys could go listen to if you wanted to. I wanted to mention, Steve, that in talking tonight prior to coming on here, your noon, 1 o'clock attitude and energy is much different than your 8, 9 o'clock. I don't know if anybody has ever told you that. And it was the same thing when we used to record in the morning on Sundays. It'd be like Sleepy Steve a little bit. You have to get him going. Gets him more excited about the indie games. Versus the nighttime Steve is what I'm trying to say is Steve is super night owl, and it's very apparent.
Yes, very much so. That's been me my entire life. I don't know what it is. I would say ever since like middle school, I've always desperately gravitated towards evenings. I was so pumped when I was working third shift. I love third shift, but
wow. That's crazy.
I know. But now I got to work that 9 to 5 and just be tired my whole life. So you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But I will say, in spite of my terrible low energy I brought to the stream, they still managed to raise right around $2,000 for Extra Life. So kudos to everyone over at the Cartridge Club. Thank you to Derek Deej13 on the internet. He did a lot of the effort in terms, at least from my perspective, he did a lot of the coordination, setting up of the overlays, stuff like that. So he was behind the scenes helping a lot. But, kudos to everyone who contributed their time and gameplay to raising all that money. It was very cool.
They do that every year, and I'm sorry. I missed it this year. It was like something I'm used to doing every year, and I just didn't have the capability or the time this year to do it, unfortunately. So I was like, I missed it just doing some Jackbox with I usually just go on Jackbox or something like that with the community, but it's okay. It was still cool to pop in and say hi and just see everybody having a good time, and of course for a good cause like always.
Yeah, very much so.
I do want to mention, Steve, that I thought it was a wonderful stream. It's just you're more mellow. You had cooler vibes, right? So I didn't mean it was bad. It was wonderful. And one of the things I noticed after doing the Polymedia stream is just knowing what goes into that and how much coordination it takes. Like it's just really impressive when it goes off without a hitch like it did. So very good time.
Yeah, very, very much so. But that's all behind me now. I didn't even play an indie game on that stream, and here we are talking about it. I played Pac-Man, which is maybe the least indie game you can imagine. Moral philosophical question. You don't have to spend too much time thinking about it. We don't have to belabor this, but what is the exact opposite of an indie game? Like, what game is the least indie game that you can possibly imagine? I'm curious what your answer would be.
Super Smash Brothers Ultimate.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's a good answer.
That's a really good answer.
That is a good answer. Damn. All right. It's literally. I mean, there's a couple indie characters in there.
There is.
Yeah,
there is.
Yeah.
But it's mostly just
Shovel Knight's in there.
It's a who's who of AAA franchises. So.
Yes,
exactly.
It's Nintendo. Like in like just massive rainbow of Nintendo, and Nintendo couldn't get any further from the indiness. Right? It's been a massive company for years.
You were doing
Yeah, the rainbow,
The SpongeBob rainbow. Yeah.
The game that came to my head immediately was Skyrim, or any Elder Scrolls.
That's a
games,
good one.
right? So massive AAA is kind of what I associate with that, right? So
That makes sense.
Like God of War Ragnarok.
yeah, something like
Yeah.
that. Shiny, pretty games like that, where you're gonna. The tree that you walk by at the beginning of the game was designed by one person, and that was their entire job, right? Like that.
Yep.
Right, yeah.
So-
There's an environmental artist.
Yep.
Yeah. Mhm.
For some reason, maybe this is just my default AAA game. When someone says like, "Close your eyes, imagine a AAA video game," the first one I always think of is Gears of War. Something about the aesthetic, or like maybe it's just because I was an early 20-something when Gears of War was popping off or whatever. But that is like visually, that is what a AAA game looks like. It's big and shiny and chunky and textured and lots of debris everywhere. Yeah. But all right. Well, not to distract from our actual introduction topic here, we do have indie games for you. We've got 3, believe it or not. If you couldn't tell how many hosts are on the show today, we've got 3. But we did want to, as we wrap into, well, I guess as we have now entered December, we are closing in on my favorite time of the year, GOTY season, Game of the Year time, baby. It's right up there with Christmas as a holiday to celebrate in December. I am quite a big fan. And just so folks know, we will, coming up here in the next, basically at the very end of December, I think our first episode in January will be our Game of the Year episode. So we will do something Game of the Year related. But we wanted to give a little bit of a discussion, a little talk to the games that we wanted to play, maybe as considerations for Game of the Year, or just because they were good indie games that came out in 2022 that we did not have the opportunity to get around to. So just a little bit of like a send-off, a little bit of a pour one out for those we missed type of deal. Just what are some games that we know we probably won't get around to, but danged it, if there was more time in the day and less work in our lives, we would have done it. So, I don't know, who wants to shout one out first? I'll open it up to you.
I can go first. I do know that Josh is going to be bringing a game that's on my list in a moment, so I'm going to hold off on that one. A game that actually just released and looks very interesting to me, and I think probably would interest both of my co-hosts, is Lunistis. And it's basically...
Interesting.
Yeah, like a PS1 Dreamcast 3D platformer, but with speed. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of Sonic Adventure, which I never really played a lot of Sonic Adventure, but just the art style of this game and everything that's going on in it, I think that I would dig it. So I don't know how much you guys have seen of this. It kind of came out of nowhere. All of a sudden I had a alert on my phone that someone on YouTube had reviewed it, and it has reviewed very well, but not a high quantity of reviews, I guess. So
yeah, it looks quite good, but that's almost certainly one that I don't think I will have time for. No, probably not at all this year.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
Yeah. Seems like my kind of game, for sure.
Yep.
But what about you, Josh? What's one that you wish you could have gotten around to?
Neon White is one. I know I didn't mention that in the pre-show. I haven't really played that. And then another one was I needed to play more Tunic. Like I started it, played like an hour or so, and I didn't get much into it. Like maybe 2 hours, something like that. Yeah, it's probably to the point where I should just start over and just start from the beginning and play the whole thing. But I know it's not a super long game, but it's just like, yeah. So there's 2 bangers right there. I know they're both awesome games. So
Are you trying to hurt me, buddy? Are you specifically trying to hurt my feelings? I was at Thanksgiving, and I was literally talking to my, I guess, brother-in-law about how much better I am at Neon White than him. It just came up naturally. I was like, man, your times are weak. Come on, what are you doing? And he's telling me about how he spent, a better part of a day trying to beat one of my times, and I was like, dude, I got dozens of times. That's all you got? Come on now. I miss the hype wave when everyone well, not everyone, when a lot of people were playing Neon White and everyone was trading times back and forth and competing. Oh, what a time. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable watching you stream, and our friend of the show, Matt Kuo, was going back and forth with you. Like, we couldn't watch him play, but we could watch his times go above Steve's right on stream, and it was really fun. So,
Oh, that's a good. He would do that to me off stream too. Matt he's greedy boy. He was too scared to stream his attempts. Okay, some of us no fear. We just throw our lives on the line on twitch.tv/Banku. All right, I got one for you. This is one that I want to get to, but it's kind of outside of my. It's not my style to play this game outside of October. Signalis. I don't know if either of you have looked into or have any interest in this game, but it is a kind of a, classic throwback to those Silent Hill, early Resident Evil, PS1, PS2 survival horror games. Very much emulating that, kind of in the way that like Tormented Souls did this year, but more of like that pixely early PlayStation style. And then apparently on top of that, it does, I haven't looked into it. I don't want to know more about it, but I am aware that it does some like interesting narrative things with either the structure of the game or the way that it tells its story, or just the story itself. Maybe, I'm not too sure, but people constantly point to the story and they talk circles around why they like it so much, which is like, that's like catnip for me. That's exactly the type of thing I'm looking for, is for someone to really love something but not be able to tell me why. It's like, that's what I want to get to. But
yeah, that's awesome.
It's a horror game, and I don't play stuff outside of October if I can avoid it at all. So maybe I'll get around to it, but almost certainly this will just have to. It's kind of like this year's Inscription, a game that I'm gonna miss in the year where everyone was really celebrating it, and I'll just have to get to it after the fact.
Yeah, I actually have a Signalis on my Steam account, and I've played it was like November something, and I was like, I think I'm kind of like over this aesthetic right now. Yeah. Like, the game is interesting, and I'm like, I'm just not in a spooky mood. I want something more jolly and happy and like uplifting right now. That's what I'm feeling. So it's definitely. I'm not even a huge Resident Evil fan or like old school horror fan, but it was actually kind of getting there. Like, I was like, yeah, I think this is something I could dig. So I'll probably go back to that at some point too. Nice.
Well, at least from what you played, it didn't turn you off, so that's encouraging to me.
No. I was like, yeah, this is like exactly what you were describing. Like, I probably only played like 45 minutes, barely even dipped my toe in, but it was like, okay, I see what this is going for. I'm not really feeling this right now. You're just not in a mood for it. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to delete it for now, but I'll put it on the backlog and I'll get to it sometime when I'm feeling that type of tone and energy.
Heck yeah. Anything else that you guys really feel like you missed the boat on, or that time stole away from you?
I mean, Josh mentioned it, but my other big one was Tunic, and I know Steve is a big fan of Tunic as well, and I've heard comparisons to Death's Door, so I kind of plan on taking on Tunic at some point in 2023. So hopefully, maybe we can have a discussion about it, but I have a feeling I will dig that game. So
I guarantee you, it's literally like difficult isometric combat. Like, it is as Death's Door-y as you could get, but like, imagine if Death's Door was actually good.
No, my God, you stop it.
Oh my God,
you don't bring that into my podcast.
I haven't played Death's Door. That was an unfair assessment, and I do strongly, in this house we stand for Titan Souls. So I'm sure they did great with Death's Door too.
If you go to the quest log very quickly, Steve, you will notice that Titan Souls is actually a side quest game. So we're not out here, all of us standing. It's just one specific one of us is standing.
That's true. The side quest, famously games we don't really like that much.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, it is obviously a great game. Death's Door takes it to an entirely different level. But that's not what we're talking about right now. Anything else you guys have to mention before we get into some games that we actually played?
I'm sure I forgot something, but I can't. Nothing's coming to mind currently.
Immortality's an indie game, right? I haven't actually looked up.
Yeah.
who published and who developed it. If Immortality is indie, which I think it is.
It's the Her Story people.
Yeah. Sam Barlow.
Sam Barlow and
that's one that I also feel like I probably won't have time for, and people are talking that up a lot. Like, it's blown up on Metacritic. Like, some of the staff that worked on it were in the Forbes 30 under 30. It was just a whole. People are celebrating Immortality, and I've heard it's good, but again, it's also, I think, kind of a heavy game, and it's just like I'm not sure it's my December vibe. December is my warm, cozy month, and I just don't know if I want to like play something really intense and like difficult to sit through. Even if it's not necessarily scary, it's just very unsettling from what I've heard. So, well, that one, there's no guarantee I won't get to it, but if I'm looking at my list of stuff I do want to check out by the end of the year, I feel like that one just is barely under the fold and isn't gonna show up. So yeah, those are all games that you, the listener, maybe do have time to play. Go check them out. Rub them in our faces. We would love to get an email letting us know that we are saying goodbye to ones that we should not have.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you guys just shame us.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. I'm fine with it.
All right. Well, that brings us then, I think, to our indie picks, the topic du jour, as they say. What do you say? Who wants to go first? How about I go first? I always transition us so that I don't have to go first, but I'm gonna fall on that sword. Noble guy.
Okay.
I'm ready.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Steve, and I'd like to talk to you. No. So I'm gonna bring a game. Sometimes I like to get you both kind of do this, but I'm gonna pick on Drachma. I like to get my Drachma on. And I like to be a little coy boy. I like to hide my indie pick, make sure Discord's not ratting me out. And I'm only playing it when no one's paying attention. But sometimes I just come right in your face and I stream that SOB and I play the game that I'm going to bring to IndieQuest. And I did that in this case. It's Tinykin. I'm bringing Tinykin.
Nice.
Tinykin, fitting for our GOTY discussion, is a 2022 video game. It is a 3D platformer. Developed by Splash Team, who previously, as far as I could see, I think their only previous game was a game called Splasher, which I actually own but have never checked out. Splasher is like a 2D, looks like kind of maybe like a Splatoon meets Super Meat Boy kind of deal, like a paint-themed 2D precision flat platformer, a splatformer, if you will.
Ooh.
Yeah, you know what's up. Published by Tiny Build and available on PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox. It's available on consoles, Xbox One XS. If you want to play it, it's there. It's in the places you play video games. You can get it. You can get it on your Steam Deck. You can get it on your PlayStation with your trophies. Pretty reasonable platinum. You can get it on your Xbox. All those places. So, what is this game? I think you guys have seen it, but for those that haven't, I do recommend that you look up videos of this game because it is striking. It is a 3D platformer, but you play as 2D flat sprites on 3D backgrounds. And I want to be clear, when I say sprites, that to me conjures images of like pixelated sprites. Like when I think of a sprite, I think of the Super Nintendo. That's not this. These are like beautiful, like vector art, like gorgeous, basically like animation cells of just character movement on 3D backgrounds. It looks very similar to, and this reference is going to come up a lot, even though it's somewhat specific. It reminds me of Demon Turf, which was a platformer that came out last year, I think. Very.
Yeah, you talked about it before. You brought it to the quest log, actually.
Very, very similar.
The character design reminds me, if people don't know exactly what Demon Turf is, the character design reminds me of like Phineas and Ferb. You guys ever watch Phineas and Ferb, the cartoon?
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah, except for in a 3D world. So imagine like one of Phineas and Ferb's friends running around a 3D world. Like that's what I thought of immediately. So.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. My point of comparison, which is not helpful, because this is like maybe even more obscure than Tinykin, is the character kind of reminds me of Carbot, the like animator who used to do StarCraft 2 like 2-minute animation joke YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Kind of like very cutesy, very just very colorful, very cute. But
Yep.
Phineas and Ferb, much more relatable, as always. Thank you, my friend. The rest of the game does not have like that very like animated, cartoony style. The rest of the game is sort of, it's not flat textures, but it's textures that are much more like light, colorful. They're not super detailed, but not because it doesn't feel like a budget thing. It feels like a conscious design choice. They didn't want you to like see every fine little grain. So the game, the actual playing of it is a 3D platformer. You are this little tiny character. In the entire game takes place inside of a house. So it's one of these games that does something I love, where everyday objects are massive in relation to you. Like, it's you're roughly the size where like you could use a bottle cap as a shield if you wanted to. Like that's roughly how big. You're like the size of a piece of Captain Crunch, just a little nothing. And so they didn't want, like, because you're so zoomed in, they weren't looking for you to see like every tiny groove in that wooden drawer. They wanted it to just be colorful and cartoony.
It became a running gag in your stream that we were like, this is kind of like Katamari Damacy.
Yes.
Everybody, like 4 people were like, this reminds me of Katamari Damacy. Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. Very similar. Yes. And it was actually probably the exact right scale. But
Yep.
the other game, in addition to Katamari Damacy, that people will point to is Pikmin, is the obvious example. So the game is called Tinykin. Again, I said that you are 3D platforming in these levels inside of a house. Every room in the house is its own 3D level, self-contained level, and then you connect to them by going through different doors and stuff, and that's how you get to different levels. But as you explore these levels, you're collecting a bunch of different collectibles in traditional 3D platformer fashion. Kind of the first and most primary one you're collecting is the Tinykin. So the Tinykin are these little adorable creatures that they come in these little eggs, and when you run into them, they pop open, and then they'll start following you Pikmin style. And just like Pikmin, there are different colored Tinykin that serve different functions or that have a different unique ability. So there's like purple Tinykin, and those are the ones that can push and pull and carry objects. There are red Tinykin that are explosive. If you throw them at certain objects, they'll blow up and usually destroy that. So like a really good example of that is often there'll be like little bridges made out of like toothpicks or matchsticks that will be blocking your path, and you'll need to blow those up. There are green ones, which are actually very cool. When you hold down R2, they will build a ladder under where you're standing, and the more you have, the taller that ladder builds up and becomes. And so that's how you can get like some real verticality. And then there's a couple other ones too. I don't want to like spoil every type of Tinykin in the game, but every level is self-contained in that the Tinykin you find will only be available to you in that room. And so a big part of the exploration of the platforming is you trying to find Tinykin to get enough of them of a certain type to unlock new areas, achieve certain objectives, etc. So you might, a good example is there's a room where there's one of those like old like remote controlled RC cars that run along a electric track. They hook in on the little things in the middle, and one of the pieces of that track is missing, and you need to try to put it back together so that you can race those cars. And that piece of track will be somewhere random. Maybe it's up in like a dollhouse in another part of the room. You'll need to collect enough Tinykin, in this case purple ones, because those are the ones that can lift stuff, to carry that piece of track and then navigate and guide them back to where they need to bring the thing. So it's a lot of hunting for like sort of these specific level objective type objects, and then using your Tinykin to either reach them or interact with them in some way. There's other collectibles too. So the other main collectible beyond Tinykin is pollen, which are just these little like floating, they look like caramel corn type things, and they're all over the level. If you collect a certain amount of them in any given level, it lets you upgrade your character, and I'll talk to a little bit more about what that ability is here in a sec. And then on top of that, there are artifacts, which are basically lore building objects that you get for doing either like sort of special side quests or unique challenges, stuff like that. There's mail, which are just kind of like a bog standard collectible that lets you get more pollen. And then there's the ship pieces, which is the main objective of the game. You are trying to rebuild a ship, very much Pikmin style, to escape the house that you're in. The story is that you believe you found sort of like the origin of the human species or the planet that they originally came from. You launch your ship off, crash land in this other world, which is a house, and you're trying to escape. So it's you collecting the various pieces you need to rebuild that ship and get up and out of there. Now, I've been saying a lot of words, and I've been saying them fast, and they've been coming at you hard. Are there any questions that anything I can clarify, anything that is unclear at this point?
I will mention that I know Steve went into some detail about what it looks like, and I know I'm always the guy that says this is pretty and whatever, but we were talking about AAA games earlier, and I just want to mention that if this game came out in 2009, it would have been a premier looking game. Like, it is very good looking in the 3D graphics and like the structure of the surroundings, right? It is excellent. Like, this is a top tier PS3 game. That is what it reminds me of.
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
Again, not indie, but my touch point that I kept saying is that this is like a modern remake of Toy Story 3, the 3D platformer. It's like, if that ran at a buttery smooth 60 frames a second constantly and had this just like beautiful striking art style, that's what you get. It is. If I can also borrow a line from my good buddy Seth here, you got to look up a video of this game. You got to just look. You got to look it up and see it in motion because it's so good. It's so good. Okay, so we now know how we know what we're doing in these worlds. But how are we doing them? What are our movement options? What's our tech, baby? What's the tech? And that's where this game is really good. I am so surprised at how good it feels to move around in this game, considering how relatively few options you have. So you have a couple different abilities that you'll use to navigate the different levels. The first, and probably your main one, is you have a bubble that you can use to float horizontally. So if you do a double jump action, you'll kind of lock in your horizontal height and hover for, like 5-10 seconds, something like that, while this like little bubble meter goes down. And that's how you can traverse good horizontal distances. Collecting the pollen in those different levels that I mentioned is what lets you upgrade that bubble duration. And so, by the end of the game, you'll be almost able to hover across like the entirety of a room. Like, you can go massive distances later on. They do not limit you very hard on this because it's clearly a game that wants you to like jimmy your way up to find little nooks and corners, hover over to a thing, jump up, find a little nail to stand on and make a big ladder of green tinykin. Like, it is not prescriptive in how you navigate these worlds. There's a lot of different options in how to move around and get places.
Something that I really liked about the hovering is in a lot of games, 3D platformers, 2D platformers, when you have a hover mechanic, you lose height, and you don't do that in this game. And I really like that because sometimes you have to like judge how far something is away and like, can I do my Yoshi hop to actually get
or
there?
Like Spyro glide or
gliding down. And this, it's like, no, if I'm level with it and I have enough bubbles, I can get there. And I really like that about this game. I think it speeds up, and maybe you're going to get to that, but the gameplay is very snappy. You mentioned it a little bit, but like, it just speeds up your traversal of the world. So
yeah, very much so.
So in each area, it's kind of like you get like kind of similar to Toy Story. You get like a room. It's like, okay, you kind of know where the objective is. Figure out how to get to that objective. Pretty much, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's more like basically at the start of every room, it's very open, very sandboxy. You don't. Okay. It's not like A to B. You will start. So that, like, there's a kitchen level, for example, and you're trying to. Again, this game's got a weird story, but you're trying to like broker a peace between this like labor faction of silverfish and like these Union Buster ants, basically, and the way that you need to do that is by baking a cake so that everybody's happy. And so you can, like, in the center of the room already right away access It's kind of like where the cake is going to be, and you're basically just exploring every corner of the room. You're exploring up in the cupboards, in the pantry, in the fridge, in the freezer, in the cabinet drawers underneath the sink, everything, to find all the different ingredients that you need, and then have your tinykin, Reed, not Pikmin, bring them back up to the mixing bowl and then mix up the cake. So what I really like about it is that you can it's Skyrim, baby. It's, you see that mountain, you can climb that mountain.
Yeah.
You can go anywhere. And I'll speak to that in a sec, but there's one other movement thing that I really got to touch on before I do, because it'll lead us into both the level design and the movement, is you can skateboard, soap board, actually. So I was really surprised that they gave me this, but oh my God, it was such a smart decision. You can at any point hold R1 and your character will skateboard on a little tiny bar of soap, like a hotel-sized bar of soap.
Yep.
And every ledge in the game can be grinded on. And
I'm sold.
Yeah, 100%. It's like low key Tony Hawk for real.
Yeah.
And then that's also how you basically fast travel between different parts of the room, is you'll find spider silk or something that you can grind across that'll let you get from the top of this piano up to the ceiling fan, right? That's how you navigate very quickly. And so because you can bust that out at any point, there's no restrictions to it, nothing. The whole game is so snappy. It's so quick. The best way I can describe it is, it feels like a game that I have played every year for the last 20 years. So playing this game feels like how I feel when I play Super Mario 64, where I'm just so intimately familiar with the moveset, and I know the levels. I can boom, 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 navigate exactly where I want to go, exactly when I want to do it. This game felt like that from Boo. Felt like that immediately. I was my confidence meter was at 100% the whole time I was playing, and it makes you feel so cool. And what's nice about that is the game is ridiculous in its setup. At any point, there's at least 3 different things that you want to check out. You are not restricted to you're never thinking, God, where should I go next? You're always thinking, okay, all right, there's some pollen over there, but I know I got to go over there and get that object. But if I jump up to this ledge up above me, then there's some tinykin up there that I might need to collect. You're always doing this mental math of there's just a bounty, a feast in front of me, and I'm just trying to plot out both what is the most efficient way to do it, and literally trying to remember what you're going to need to go do, because there's so many good options in front of you, and you never have any challenge getting to those places. You're always just instantly and you're there.
I think that with a lot of classic 3D platformers 20 years ago when they were first coming out, a lot of us played them as kids and we had nothing else to do. And I know Steve still loves them, and there's plenty of people who still love them. But going back to some of those now, they are slow, or can be slow. There's seemingly a lot of in-between padding where all you're doing is walking or even jogging. From watching this, they really trim the fat on that. You are moving. I imagine after even learning more and more about this game, it seems like speed running the levels is just something they almost want you to do.
Yes. So. Yeah, honestly, you feel like you're kind of speed running it just as you go, because it's so low friction that you're just vroom, 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 taking off. And the other big thing, the huge kudos to give this game, is there is no combat in the game at all. There is not an enemy to be found. It is entirely just the joy of collecting, which takes, 1, a lot of the stress off, and 2, it just makes it a much more vibe experience. It's very chill. You're always just happy to go to the next place. It's imagine if you played a mod of Super Mario Odyssey that took out all the enemies, or a mod where you could play as N64 Mario in Tony Hawk 2 and 3 levels. Yep. It's just, it feels so good to navigate around. So, I mean, that's a lot of words to praise, the 3D platforming and a 3D platformer, which is a good sign, I think. It is indicative of the high quality of the game. A couple random things to shout out too about it. One, I mean, at this point, this is maybe kind of expected, but it was really cool that the draw distance was spot on. So from all the way across the room, I'd be able to see like, oh, there's a tinykin over on that ledge on the far other side of the kitchen. So it technically is delivering.
Pokemon can't even do that.
Dude, Pokemon can't even do it when it's on the same ledge as you. Okay.
I know. So, way to go, Tinykin.
Yeah. Something that I was worried about that I couldn't even tell you the game design trickery to do this. Maybe it's how they've set up the like fast travel points and stuff, or like those spider silk strings. But the levels have a lot of verticality to them. Like you're climbing very high in a level, up to the ceiling in most levels, and yet it never really has. If you fall down or fail a jump from really high, you don't have that like sinking feeling of like, oh, now I have to go do all that again. There's like almost always just a way back up. I don't know what it is, but something between the balance of where they checkpoint you with movement options and where they put the difficult parts of the level, it all just works perfectly. Also, oh my God, I love this. Everyone knows the classic 3D platformer trick of when you're falling down really far and right before you hit the ground, you do your double jump to like stop and save your momentum, or you do your ground pound. The game implements that as a mechanic because they know you're going to do it. Once you fall far enough, your character gets like a sparkle that is telling you when you land, you'll die if you don't hover right before you hit the ground. And if you do die, it's like whatever, you just instantly spawn basically right back where you were. And there's no, again, this game is friction free. There's literally no concerns about it at all. So, a lot of words on the gameplay. I'm going to say it's good gameplay.
Sounds like it. It sounds awesome, actually.
Yeah, it's legit. The music, I would say, is music that you will enjoy if you are a 3D platformer fan or a good music fan. I wouldn't say it's front and center in the game. I would say that it complements the game very well, but the movement is the star of the show. But it's upbeat. It's very fun. A lot of like xylophones, like little electric strings, type of stuff that doesn't feel out of place for a 3D platformer, but is noticeable enough. Sometimes 3D platformer music fades too far into the background. This does not. This is very good. And the story itself, while I could go into detail on it, but let's be real, it's a 3D platformer. Are you coming here for the story? You're coming here to collect pollen. You're coming here to collect tiny.
Yep.
It serves its purpose just fine. There's enough like humor and writing there if you want it, but realistically, I was mostly skipping, or not skipping, but like really quickly skimming the story bits and like kind of only half paying attention because they don't want them to get in the way, and I didn't want them to get in the way. So, and all that happens in about 5 or 6 hours. It's a nice tight experience, which is exactly what I look for in a game. Quite good. So, any questions you all have before we close this one out?
Yeah, honestly, it just sounds like an incredible package. Though, like everything you've said so far, just sounds like checking a checkbox and just like a game that I need to play, like all the way down. So, yeah, I mean, go ahead, let us know. What part of the quest log is this going to go on today?
Dude, you need to play this game for sure.
Okay.
This game is kind of like, again, I enjoyed Demon Turf. This game's kind of everything I wanted Demon Turf to be. And I would say this is probably the best 3D platformer I played this year. And that's in a world where Kirby came out. So I'm not, it's not a legally binding statement. You can't hold me to that. Kirby also slaps hard, but I'm on an indie podcast. I'm going to gas up my indie boys a little bit. It's really good. And I'm going to straight slap that SOB on the main quest. It's going right on the main quest because
awesome.
Because it's combat free, because the movement feels so good, and because it's so, approachable. The art style is very just like uplifting, very cute, very fun. This is like truly the type of game you could recommend to basically anyone. Like there's something in there for everyone. Maybe not so much for people that are looking for difficulty, but like it is a game that would be successful for people of all ages, and basically anyone that has been playing games since the mid 90s is going to find something fun about this game. And I mean, this happened to me, but I would say universally in my stream, almost everyone was like, "Whoa!" Everyone was like,
Yeah.
"Dang, this game is cooler than I thought it would be." Like,
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely. I've seen the game, and honestly, I was like, I'm not like the biggest Pikmin fan, and I was like, like that game is kind of fun. Like I had some fun with Pikmin 3. Like I thought it was okay, but it didn't like enthrall me. But you saying that it's more like 3D platformy with a little bit of Pikmin makes me like, okay, I can do that. You know?
yeah,
So
people point to Pikmin because it's like obviously there's some Pikmin DNA in there,
Yeah.
but like
right.
it's like 90%, Mario 64, or maybe like 80% Mario 64, 15% Tony Hawk, 5% Pikmin. So
I think that's kind of unfair. I know it's called Tinykin, so that is what they were going for. They wanted to draw that comparison to Pikmin. But in my experience, Pikmin is somewhat polarizing. Some people really love Pikmin. Some people are like, well, it just wasn't for me. And I think that this, based on what I saw Steve play, would draw more people in than Pikmin, unless you were just a massive Pikmin fan, right?
no,
So,
I agree for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
So yeah, Tinykin. Go play it on a platform of your choice.
sweet.
Wonderful.
Who's next?
I'll go. I like to be the meat in between
Okay.
my buddies.
Actually, it's been a while since I went last, so that sounds
Yeah,
good. Let's
yeah,
do
we'll
it.
Flip it up. I am bringing a game that I actually mentioned to you guys a little while ago, but I don't know if you would remember or not. It is a very old indie game, but not so old that Steve will get mad at me that it doesn't technically qualify as indie. I think it might be the oldest game that has ever been brought to IndieQuest, other than maybe Braid. So, I am bringing World of Goo.
Ooh,
Oh, I love that game.
nice. Dude.
Yeah.
That's a classic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So you both have played World of Goo.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Love it.
not a lot, but I had friends that were really into it, and I poked at it a little bit while they were playing.
Okay.
It, so
You played
Yeah.
it. You played it to completion, Josh.
Yeah, it was one of my early like PC indies. Like I'm sure people played it on 360 and things, but I played it on PC with a mouse, and yeah, it was good times.
So it came out in 2008. Developer was 2D Boy, and from what I could tell, I don't think it ever came to 360. I don't think it still
Did it
was
not?
on 360. No.
Okay, I just assumed it was because of that
Yeah,
era, you
right.
know. Yeah, so
I think it's because of the mechanic, right? It doesn't lend itself well to a controller. So it originally came out on Wii and PC.
oh okay,
And
makes sense.
I'll get into the gameplay here in a moment. But yeah, originally Wii, PC, and now it is on phones. You can get it on whatever kind of phone you have, and it is on Switch. So that is actually how I played it. I played it on Switch. Overview of this game, and you can correct me. Either of you can correct me if this doesn't sound in line, but it should. 2D physics-based architectural puzzler. That's the word
That's
soup
perfect.
I'm giving it.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's spot on.
I like it.
I'd say.
Cool. Thank you. So, in World of Goo, you have little goo balls. Like the very first level, you just see these little goo balls rolling around on the bottom. And I think there's a structure, a minor structure already built. And you can take the goo balls and start connecting them with other goo balls in a structure. Or if it's already built, you can start building it yourself off of whatever they provide you, right? The way I think about it, in like 3rd or 4th grade, I don't know if you guys did this or not, we had a science experiment that had a lot to do with architecture, where we would take raw spaghetti noodles, uncooked spaghetti noodles, and poke them into spice drops. And what we tried to do is build a structure with only so many spaghetti noodles and so many spice drops, and see how many small paperback books you could fit on top of, or put on top of it before it collapsed, right?
So
Did you guys do anything like
we didn't have, it wasn't that exact setup, but in middle school I was in a class called Tech Ed, which was like
Yeah.
technology education, a bunch of different little things, some robot stuff, some laser stuff.
Yeah,
But
we
one
did
of the
that
like
too.
modules in that was you'd build a bridge out of very light, thin balsa wood and
Yes.
like a certain amount of glue. And then we would put them on 2 concrete bricks, and we would hang weights underneath them. And it was the same thing. It was, with a strict amount of resources, how much weight can this support before it eventually collapses in on itself?
Yeah, we did basically that exact same thing in physics class with like little balsa wood, like popsicle sticks or whatever. And we put, who can put the class textbook, whoever does the most got like a gift card or something, I think. They had like a little competition. So I've done similar things in school.
Right. So you're not putting anything on top or you do hang stuff, I guess, from the structures you build. But the purpose is to build your structure up in World of Goo, similar to those things that we just explained, and try to get it to wherever there's a pipe in each level that you're attempting to build your structure to, and then so many of your remaining goo have to get sucked into the pipe, and it gives you a goal, right? So you might need to get 4 goo into the pipe, or 8 goo into the pipe, or 30 goo into the pipe, depending on the level. And you have to build that thing up. It will start to suck on your structure, so it kind of pulls everything to it, and then all the goo will eventually just start streaming up and going into the pipe until you complete the level, and then you press continue and you can move on to the next level. Anything that I left out of the basic gameplay that you guys can think of?
I think that's pretty well described. Like it's not too hard to describe, but like it's just like look, go pull up a video of it and take a look. I guess on this one. But like I think that you described it pretty well.
Cool. So there are actually several different kinds of goo that you can use. Some examples: there is a green goo that can actually be reused. So most goo you cannot go and take back from your structure. Your structure is what it is. If you screw something up, you just have to reset. But the green goo, for example, can be taken and used somewhere else. And that actually allows for some interesting puzzles where you can actually take pieces away from the structure and actually form a line, which you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise, because you're actually building, right? And it doesn't allow you to just go a straight line. You always have to do everything in like triangles and stuff like that. There's always 2 connectors. You're always connecting to 2 other goo. But if you have green goo, you can replace them and actually create just a line rather than a big structure. Another goo, I guess it's not necessarily a goo, but they allow you to use balloons sometimes, so you can actually use those balloons to float your structure up and over top of hazards and things like that. Certain goo can't be used to build structure at all. They're purely for the bonus at the end, right? So you actually just have to find a way to get certain types of goo into the pipe, and it doesn't let you build with them. Structures can fall down. And the main way this happens, in my experience, is you overweight one side of your structure. The goo structures are very rubbery, I guess, and they kind of flop all over the place. So it's not very concrete, I guess. It's the opposite of concrete. So that's why that's where a lot of the physics come in, right? Where you have to keep it balanced as you go up. And there are even some puzzles where you have to build a very, very high goo structure where you're almost putting a little bit of weight on the left side, the structure starts to lean, then you're quickly putting some weight on the right side, it starts to lean back and forth. So it's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa all the way up to the pipe. So you're actually like racing the clock. There's no clock, but you're racing to get up there to actually complete the puzzle before it all just collapses in on itself, right? And then the other main thing is there are actually some like elements, obstacles, I would say, that will impede your progress. There's one specific level pretty early on where there are some windmills, and the windmills create wind, so you actually have to build over top of the windmill your structure and use balloons to do that, and then it will blow it on the other side where the pipe is. The issue is if you build too close to the windmill, it will destroy your structure, right? And the wind can be very difficult to deal with because you kind of have to weight it down so much, and it's worth experiencing for sure. So,
you know what game it reminds me of? Have you guys ever played Bridge Constructor? Either any of them? of those games?
No, I haven't.
If you guys ever played those games, it's pretty much what that is. The same idea where you're trying to build a bridge with a limited resource and get, basically, usually it's like the Portal one, you got to get the companion cube across or whatever, or it's like the motorcycle, you got to get a motorcycle across. But it's the same idea. It's like the physics, you're trying to like go quick enough to get the physics to build a bridge to get something across. So it's kind of similar in that respect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So that leads me into presentation. The story is told exclusively by reading signs throughout the levels that are left by the sign painter. It's always signed the sign painter. This mysterious entity that you never actually meet, but is kind of telling the story, like I said, through reading that stuff. It's completely optional. You don't ever have to touch a sign at all. Although sometimes the sign do give you hints on what to do next within the level, but sometimes they're just purely story related. Sometimes I'm like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here. I've screwed with it for a while. I always usually touch the signs as soon as I see them, but I'll look at the sign again and see what it has me do. And it tells me nothing, and I just get frustrated, and I'm like, okay, back to the puzzle. Like, whatever. I'll go back. Sometimes it gives you some subtle hints. It never comes right out and says, this is what you should do. But the story, to me, has a lot to do with, like, classism of the goo, like political structure in a way, or like how some goos are seen as above other goos. There are pretty goos and ugly goos and things like that.
Political structure is
of the goo world.
A very good usage of the word structure here.
Thank you, Steve. Wow. But there's also a lot of like frowning upon industrialization. It's a very deep story that is told very subtly that you can completely ignore if you want to, from my experience, right? So it's different. Yeah.
The
Yeah,
idea
that's cool.
that a game called World of Goo, which is about wobbly bridge physics. You're like, all right, so it's a classist tale.
It really is.
About the bourgeoisie and the proletariat.
I mean,
The political hierarchy of goos.
It really is. It's very strange. It is not what I expected going in, I will say.
Nice.
But the graphical style, so I talked about it, is 2D, very colorful. There are actually some levels that are pretty dark. There's one level that kind of harkens to old school computer graphics. It's very green, so you can think of like Game Boy, but the way I think about it is like Matrix or something with all the 01s, right? Like that black and all the green text, like that's kind of what it reminded me of. The character designs, so that is one of the more striking things about this game. They're very odd. They honestly remind me of like Nightmare Before Christmas or Tim Burton or something like that, like his design of how he draws his characters. Yeah,
Maybe like a little salad fingers in there or something.
Yes.
Yeah, I see that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's just different, right? It didn't have to be that way, and that's just the style they were going for in some of their storytelling and stuff like that. So, all right, moving on to music, composed by Kyle Gabler, I think. He also did all the art and the writing, so a very small team put this together, 2D Boy, but he specifically did a lot of it. Lots of instruments, very light and airy in certain levels, but then extremely ominous and can be very eerie in other levels. Like, stark contrast depending on what level you're playing, but all the music is very good, and in my opinion was one of the highlights of the game. It was unfortunate that I played it on the Switch with touchscreen, because the Switch, I was doing other things, right? When you play touchscreen on the Switch, at least in my experience, how I play the games like that, something else is going on. That's why I'm not playing it on TV. This doesn't actually allow you to play it on TV on Switch unless you use Joy-Cons, and you have to use, it basically is the same style that you used to be able to use with the Wiimotes, right? Where you can actually, pick up
like point
that.
out the screen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And I was like, it seems more intuitive to me to grab the goos with my finger. So basically, the way I played it on Switch was how I would have on a phone. And I think it worked really well that way.
Yeah, just make sure you wash your hands after you touch the goose. You know?
Yeah. Good one, Josh. Love it.
Yeah, cringe if you want. I roll. Okay.
But unless you guys have any other questions or you have any comments you wanted to add, that will be bringing me to my final verdict.
I'm very interested to hear what you have to say because I only think of this game in the context of the time it came out. Coming to it in 2022 is a very interesting perspective. Sorry, go ahead, Josh.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, I remember at the time, 13 years ago, loving it and enjoying it, my time with it. But I haven't played since then, so I'm interested to see like a 2022 perspective on it, like where you are landing on it nowadays.
So I actually love that you both said that because that is the main reason I am going to be placing it where I am. I think that World of Goo in 2008 was probably extremely revolutionary, especially on the Wii, because there's probably nothing like that where you could just use the Wiimote and take the little goo dudes and build your structure with the motion controls. I am going to put it on the side quest.
Okay.
From a 2022 standpoint. And the main thing I want to do is if anyone is listening that has experience with World of Goo or has a strong love for World of Goo from when they played it and have a lot of nostalgia for it, feel free to write us because I would love to hear someone's thoughts who experienced it 14 years ago versus me experiencing it now. The main reason I'm putting it on the side quest is because so many games, I've played plenty of cell phone exclusive physics-based puzzlers, right? They're
Right.
a dime a dozen at this point. And I'm sure World of Goo really did a lot for those games and how they got developed because the developers probably took World of Goo as an inspiration, or at least one of the inspirations for why they were doing their game. But to me, and the way I played it and the way I could have played it on phone, it's good, really good game, but it kind of blends in my opinion, to a lot of what those games do. I think it was a pivotal game when it came out in 2008, and I could see why it had rave reviews. But 14 years later, it's not that it doesn't age well, it's just it's aged, right? It's definitely aged.
There's other games that surpassed it or
Yes.
done the same thing better, or there's just so many of them, and just kind of like you said, it blends in with the rest of them. It makes complete sense to me.
And I mean, it's interesting to think, you say those types of mobile games are a dime a dozen, and I think that that's definitely true. But for folks that weren't there back then and are not like wrapping their head around the timeline, World of Goo came out before Cut the Rope, before Fruit Ninja. It came out before Angry Birds. Like it was ahead of all those games.
Yep.
But that pool has certainly filled in the time since.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I remember playing a game with buddies at work where there's like this dot. You can see a dot on your phone, and you have to draw a shape, and then it kind of the ball, I guess, falls into it, and you have to like try to get it into another barrel or bucket or something.
Yep.
And those games are everywhere, and that's kind of. I mean, I still think World of Goo is pretty unique and worth experiencing, but it doesn't stand alone anymore, right? So,
Right. Definitely, I would say if the art style strikes you and you're into that genre, I would say pick it up and give it a shot. Like that's what I would say. That would be my opinion because it's like a Don't Starve, like you said, Tim Burton. That style, like kind of like macabre a little bit, looking to it. Yeah, I think if you're into that art style and you see some gameplay and you want a little puzzler to kill a few hours, there you go.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would also. The only other perspective I would come at it from is if you're someone who is curious about, doing like a historical play of important indie games. because World of Goo was a big like first wave indie revival, like Humble Bundle era, right alongside stuff like Super Meat Boy and all those. Like in those few years, World of Goo was one of the big ones to like maybe the earliest of that era that I remember people like really talking about alongside AAA games of the time as like this is as good as anything else coming out from a major studio. So very very much a trendsetter in that regard, and interesting from that perspective.
Two things I will add before I pass the ball to Josh here and we close out with him. It is a very pick up and play, like the pick up and play nature of this game is I think the way they want you to play it. Although if you're playing on PC, it wouldn't be as pick up and play. But the nice thing about being able to play it on your cell phone or even on the Switch is you can turn it on for 5 minutes and complete a puzzle and then move on. I was playing it on my lunch break at home, things like that. So it really lends itself to that type of gameplay. Also, this game is surprisingly long for what it is. It took 6-7 hours, I think, to complete it. So maybe it's a little bit shorter than that, but and it's because I spread it out over a lot of time. But depending on how good you are at the puzzles, some of the puzzles really stumped me for a while, right? So I was sitting and staring at them for a while and resetting. And I didn't mention it, but there's fireflies where you can tap a firefly and it resets one move. So that's nice for the user experience. But it's pretty long. There's a lot to do. So that's all. Josh.
Kind of meaty for a puzzle game.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
For sure. But Josh, what did you bring
awesome.
today?
All right, I brought a little game called Lunistis.
I knew it. I saw that Coy Boy face when we were talking about it at the top of the show.
Yeah.
No way. That's awesome. This is as close as we're going to get to bringing the same game. I at least mentioned this game. That's awesome.
It'll happen someday, but yes, this will get us by for now.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So, Lunistis, 32 era style platformer game. It's basically like somebody went into a shed full of unmade PS1/Dreamcast games and blew the dust off and said, here's this 3D platformer.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I'm thinking when I play this game. You play as a character named Hannah, and she is a Tanuki, and you have a double jump and a triple jump, and you do basically platforming through floating platforms, not unlike Sonic Adventure. So I'm just throwing about all these 3D platformer things. So it's a really cool art style. I think that they really nail the 32-bit era look. It's polygonal, and it has that little bit of anti-aliasing, I guess, or whatever, to the edge of everything. Everything looks a little rough, but in a good way, kind of like a crisp way. Mm-hmm. It's like if you took the fuzziness of that era and put it into focus, I would say would be a good way to describe it. The gameplay is super nice, super fun, super flowy and frenetic, and so basically take a Sonic Adventure level, like I said, and you're platforming. There's the mechanic is there's a double jump, and then the triple jump is like a spin attack. So you can actually chain this double or triple jump any way you want. So if you needed to get a little more height, you can do a jump, then a spin, and you'll jump a little higher. But if you need to get a little more distance, you do a jump, and then a spin. And then there are little hazards around the stage or enemies that don't really fight you. They're more just in your way. You could either go around them or attack them, depending on where they're located in the world. And there are secrets in every stage, multiple secrets. You are collecting, not unlike Tony Hawk, you're collecting letters if you go to secret paths that you can discover, and you're spelling out her name, Hannah, Hana. And so each of these 7 stages that you go through are 4 letters that you can collect, and there's also these gems all over the map that if you smash all of them, I think you get something. I'm assuming. I actually never did it. I thought I did it in one stage. I was like, oh yeah, I think I got all the gems, and then I didn't. So it's just another collectible. And then there are cranes all over the map, kind of like berries or whatever, or coins that you can collect. And you get a tier ranking at the end. So if you collect everything, you get S rank. If you get almost everything, A, and then it goes down. And it rewards you for going faster too. You get more points for the stages, and like I'm just throwing a lot out at you guys, but like it's 7 stages each with a different theme. There are some like there's a 4 stage that has kind of like that low poly, like almost trying to look realistic 32-bit style to it. That's hard to describe, like what a log would look like in like Resident Evil 2. You know what I mean? That's like the textures you're seeing in the world. And then there's like a candy gumdrop world that's like ice cream and sundaes, and it's actually a rhythm based kind of like all the platforms go in and out on the rhythm of the music, which is pretty fun. It's a little more challenging. I'm pretty terrible at that specific stage, to be honest. That's the one I had the most trouble with. But the game is all about just going from point A to point B as fast as you can, as like stylistically as you can, and just having a good time. And yeah, short little boy. It's like 2 hours to get through the game in one run, but it's very replayable because of all the collectibles and the stages.
I mean, definitely PS1 era, but it also gives me like some Sega Saturn vibes almost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like it has like a little bit of, I don't know, maybe like Nights into Dreams energy. Not in how it's controlling. It controls very, in looking very Sonic Adventure-y.
Yes.
But yeah, something about like the crazy explosion of color, or maybe it's that there's at least some levels in the screenshots I'm looking at that are like carnival-ish theme.
Yeah, there's a carnival one. There's like a beach theme, forest. There's like a space one. You know, so there's 7 areas that you go to, and each area has multiple stages to do. Some have 2, some have 3, and it's just like each time I'm like interested to see what they do with the next area. Like I'm like excited to get through the stage to see what the next area is going to look like and play like, because they had different hazards depending on the stage. And it's like I said, it's not really a game about combat. It's more about movement and platforming. And like you do the grind rails like you would in Sonic. There are I think 1 or 2 loop-de-loops. It's not as much loop-de-loops as Sonic's, unfortunately, but they have the little boost pads, and there's like kind of things that are kind of like the bouncing pads, like you bounce between, you know, in Sonic, but they're kind of like little like levitating looking things. You just hit them kind of like and you ping pong around. And yeah, it plays really well. It's really fun. I do think it is a little challenging for. Sometimes it is like almost unfairly challenging, but the checkpointing is pretty good. Like you do a little backtracking occasionally. So say like there's like this area I can't quite land on these platformers. Like I'm just like missing it, like I'm jumping incorrectly, or it could just be me. But I had a couple times where I was like, okay, yeah, it's a little frustrating. But then when you get through it, you're like, okay, I overcame that obstacle. So it's kind of like that type of platformer where there is a couple of a little challenging things that you'll have to do a few times to get the rhythm of, but once you get that rhythm, it's just like butter, you know?
It seems like a flow statey kind of game, right? Like once you know where the enemies are, what the objects are, where the platforms are, that it would just kind of all click into place, and you'd be doing things faster than you would even be thinking about them.
Yeah, pretty much. And like after I beat the game, like I think it took about 2 hours to beat, something like that, give or take. I was playing through some of the stages I had already beat before, and I kind of knew the obstacles. And the thing is I was just going through them a lot faster, like you said. And then it was kind of fun to be like, oh, I never saw that path that goes that direction. That's a secret. So, you know, you go to do the secret. And usually when you go collect a letter, it's like super like more precise platforming. You know, it's like you have a little tiny squares you're trying to like land on, 4 or 5 of them to get to this, you know, area, and then like kind of do like a grind rail and jump over. And I think this is kind of one of those where people are going to break it. Like you're going to see this on like SGDQ, like people just getting through the stage in like 25 seconds, you know, and things like that. So I think it kind of rewards you for experimenting in the levels a bit too.
I think my favorite thing about the graphics and the way this game looks is if this game had come out in 2010, we would be like, yeah, this looks like hot garbage, right? But the fact that in 2022 we can look at this and be like, man, this is beautiful. I love the way this looks, and just that we can be nostalgic for this era is just something, because it is objectively, compared to new games, ugly, but we all think it looks great, right? And that's I just love that about it.
Yeah, it has a charm to it.
Yes.
I would say it's very inspired by so many things. You see all the inspirations like on its sleeve as you're playing, and I think that it nails what it goes for. Like, it's fast, it plays really well, it has excellent music. Like, think of Sonic music, right? It's like orchestration with like some like drum and bass themes and a little bit of like electronic mixed with orchestration, and that has it through the entire game. And you'll be like, I was just like standing still just listening to the music because it's that damn good. I was like super into it. The composer's name is Knasibus, Knasibus. Nasibus. I don't know how to pronounce that, but kudos to that dude. Like, the music's super good. Like, I was toe tapping throughout the entire game, and yeah, it's a perfect portable game. I don't know if it's coming to Switch. I think it is on Switch, actually.
Yeah, it
so
is.
It's perfect for like a pick up and play stage in like 5-6 minutes type of game. I played it on my Steam Deck, just had a really good time with it on there. And like, I don't have too many things to gripe with this game. I just think that what they went for, they really nailed it. Fun little thing that if you beat the game once, you unlock alternate characters.
Oh, nice.
And one of them is Tori from Tori 3D, which that's interesting and kind of cool.
I saw that
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
like as I'm watching the Steam trailer. You only for like a brief second see like a little yellow bird, and I was like, wait, is that Tori? I was trying to like figure out, is this the same developer, or is that just like a little nod?
I think it's just a little nod to the developer. But yeah, so to me, like, it was like a little ray of sunshine for me playing this. It put a smile on my face. It's just with like any platformer, there's a couple stages where I got like I hit a wall for a minute or two, and then I was a little frustrated, but then I overcome, and then the level's just like, okay, that was pretty badass the way they did that. And the grind rails are just so fun to like grind on. You like get so much speed. I feel like they do speed better than like Crumble does, and I that's one of those ones I put on a main quest that maybe probably should have been a side quest, but hey, I was pretty excited at the time. But yeah, this game does speed as good as you would think a Sonic game would do speed, so that's saying something.
Heck yeah.
For sure. I think it should be. I'm assuming you're about to wrap up, Josh. And maybe you're going to talk about this, but regardless of where Josh puts it on the quest log, it is amazing that this kind of game could be made as cheaply as they must have made it, because at full price it is $5.
Yeah,
And
ridiculous.
$5. Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like it's possible. But yeah, I mean, it's wild. It's really cool. Like, I would say this is a $15 game, and
Right.
to see that it's $5, I'm like, geez, that's crazy.
Yeah, bargain title with lots of replayability, I would say, especially if you want to try to go for like that 100% all S tier every single stage. If you get an S tier, you get like little like snippets of lore, and like it has a story that's kind of, to me, I was like, this is a little incomprehensible to me. I don't really know what's going on, but hey, seems interesting. So if you wanted to jump into the story, you could. But I love the visual language it uses, and there are little cutscenes that are really awesome. I thought they were so vibrant and fun to look at, and yeah, like there's nothing too negative I could say about this game. It's just a nice little package. 2 hours, $5. Like you said, like, how can you go wrong with that? So to me, this is a main quest, and I was thinking maybe it would be a side quest like during my playthrough of it, because I was like, oh, that's pretty good. But once I've wrapped up, saw credits, I was like, yeah, this altogether as a package is something, especially if you're into Sonic games. Like, if you like Sonic and you want like in like that style of like speed and like platformy nature, and you want one that's like a super good take on that, I would give this a shot for sure.
Heck yeah. I think that then wraps us. So we have Lunistis as a main quest, World of Goo as a side quest, and Tinykin as a main quest. Look at us giving a little bit of a bump to those modern 2022 games and saying, screw those old games. We don't even like those old games. I'm just kidding. We love you, World of Goo. If you're listening, I think World of Goo listens to the podcast, right? They probably do.
Right.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. World of Goo's and all that. So, yeah, I think that'll wrap us up here. Who wants to take us out today? Bring us into the plugs.
Oh, okay. Let's do plugs. All right. Where can they find you on the internet, Seth?
They can find me at Captain Drachma on Twitter and, of course, in the Polymedia Discord, best place on the internet. Where can they find you, Steve?
Twitch and Twitter at twitch.tv and twitter.com/Blinkoom. That's OOM, like millions of little tiny kin running around.
Yes.
You can find me on the internet at Frantic Society. And yeah, we have other podcasts on the network that we're a part of called Polymedia, the Polymedia family, I guess. Where's there a podcast you want to shout out? When do you guys just throw one out there?
I'll throw out Polykill. Steve's on that. It's a podcast about beaten video games. And I think that he's going to give us a hint at what the challenge is for next year, aren't you, Steve?
Yeah. All right. Here's your exclusive. The challenge for next year will feature needing to play video
games. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Some number of them under some number of conditions.
I thought I was going to get him so I could get a head start.
No. No. Nice try. But thank you for shouting out, Paul. You know, I'll keep greasing Trav's wheels. That's fine. You can also go listen to Drunk Friend podcast, where Trav and Alex, Nest Drunk, every single dang episode bring on, well, not every dang, but most single dang episodes bring on special guests and talk all things games, all things sports, all things YouTube. They rap with folks, usually content creators. So they're churning through their 90s series, which I'm sad to see almost wrapping up, but it's not too late for you to listen to the whole 90s run. And I heard a little birdie tell me that they might continue on to 2000s. So that'll be fun.
I guess I'll just keep talking about Travis, because why not? We're talking about We Got Goosebumps, bringing me back to those Scholastic Book Fair nostalgic memories, them talking about those awesome classic R.L. Stine books. Go check that out if you get a minute, because I think it's really well done. So it's a lovely little podcast, just like this little podcast that's wrapping up. So who wants to wrap up the show today? Who wants to say something nice, something cozy for the folks out there?
I'll wrap us out today.
Okay.
I would like everyone to inform us of 2022 indie games that we might have missed. Shoot us an email. I want to hear about them. I actually brought a game early on that I just happened to stumble upon called Gaballer. I think that's how you pronounce it. That came out in 2022. Pretty sure no one probably would have ever heard of that game unless they listened to this podcast or just happened upon it like I did. So that is, I want to know about hidden gems of video games, of indie games from 2022. Like that, or just talk to us about a smash hit indie game and why you love it.
Heck yeah. If you want to send that to us, that's at IndieQuestPod@gmail.com.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. See ya.